All right, we're going to get started with the meeting. Welcome to our visitors in the gallery, and our first agenda item is the land acknowledgement. The Medicine Hat Police Service and its Police Commission honor and acknowledge that we are situated on Treaty 7 and Treaty 4 territory, the traditional lands of the Siksika, Blackfoot, the Kainai Blood, the Piikani Pagan, the Stoney Nakoda, and Tsuut'ina Sarsi, as well as the Cree, the Sioux, and the Saulteaux bands of the Ojibwa peoples. We also acknowledge that we are on the traditional homelands of the Métis Nation. At this point, I'll ask any commission member attending to advise the chair if they have any perceived or known conflicts of interest as per the items listed in the agenda for tonight. Seeing none, we'll move into the meeting. First order of business is to introduce and welcome our two new provincial appointees, Ms. Eleanor Robles and Mr. Miles Johnson. Congratulations and welcome. And you have tonight's agenda in front of you. Are there any changes or omissions? Okay, I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda. Councillor Sharps, seconded Councillor Van Dyke. All in favor? And that is carried. And everyone will have a copy of the previous open meeting that dates back to April 19th. And because of because a couple of our attendees were not at that meeting, we will table that for the following meeting for approval. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the police reps for presentation of commendation certificates. Chief Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have some very special people with us tonight that I'm going to invite down to the floor. If I could have Kaya Turner, Christy Hunter Wagner, and Carly Schmaltz come down to join us, please. Sorry to put you on the spot right in the middle of the floor, but I apologize for that. So we have a very significant certificate of commendation to award these three folks tonight for a very brave act that they did back in on March 30th. So Kaya, Christy, and Carly, first it was Kaya and Christy. They were driving by on the Allowance Ave overpass. And at the same time they were driving by, there was an individual that was in crisis and was on the outside of the rail of the overpass. I don't think I need to explain how serious that was in the situation they saw. I think the way our society is these days, many people choose to maybe call the police, but just to either stop but not to intervene or just drive on, unfortunately. Kaya and Christy chose otherwise. They exited their vehicle and they spoke to this individual, realized how serious it was, and ultimately had to grab onto this person so they wouldn't go off the bridge. Carly also drove by and assisted and managed to hold on to this individual until one of our police officers could arrive and then pull this individual back over the rail to safety. So I can tell you that any police officer knows that even with training, dealing with someone that's on the opposite side of the rail and getting them back over is a very unsafe thing to do, even with training. And it can happen that the person that's trying to bring them back in goes over with them very easily. So what you did is absolutely incredible. You should be commended for what you did, and you are. But I just want you to know how much we appreciate it, and this community appreciates it. You did an incredible thing, and we really appreciate what you did. it's appropriate that you're recognized here. I wish there was more people here other than your families and a couple of others that are here. I wish there was more because you deserve more recognition. But thank you so much for what you did. And we have some certificates and a small token of our appreciation. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, just by the flags.
Told Carly to go get her hat. Oh, nice. She's welcome to wear it. Come on, why don't you go over right in? Come on over in the middle. Chief and Joe on either end.
Sure. Yeah, Joe, can you kick this? I got, okay.
All right, we will move to the standing items and again over to Chief Murphy for the budget update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just be brief here. The service continues to project a negative variance year end. We have taken significant measures, though, already in the year to mitigate that, and we'll continue to monitor and report back on a monthly basis. Thanks.
Any questions? Read the budget. Okay. And the Office of the Chief report, which one are we starting with?
Start with Inspector West, Mr. Chair, with Operational Services.
Thanks, Chief. Just moving through the report, we did see it's a bit surprising. We saw an uptick in property crimes in April and a bit of a reduction, uptick in March and a little bit of an reduction in April, but otherwise pretty usual numbers. And just moving to page 10, some operational services highlights. Definitely a busier month. We can see things are picking up. A couple things I'll draw your attention to. The first bullet point there on April 3rd at approximately 1:20, members of the police service responded to a homeowner who had called in with regard to 3 individuals on their property. They called police. We know that a property crime had taken place. There was break and enter into the garage there. The drone was called and was able to locate 3 people in the vicinity using a heat signature. Officers responded and were able to make an arrest there, and upon sort of a field investigation, property from the garage was recovered from those 3 people, and they were all charged. So definitely, as we the drone is definitely being integrated into our operations, and you've heard a few other success stories before. So and the third bullet point there, patrol officers respond to a call involving a report of found military ordnance. And I just want to draw your attention, we do, being in proximity to the BATIS and CFB, we do have people who will often pick up various military rounds that they've been working out on the base, and they take them as souvenirs, door stops, that kind of thing. And we treat everyone as we really don't know what type of ordinance it is. And we have just a great working relationship with Canadian Forces. We have a number that they call, and they'll help us dispose of that ordinance, whatever it is. So this one ended up being an inert round, but this is sort of something that pops up every once in a while. And we have had actual live rounds. A number of years ago, we did recover a live mustard gas round that happened to be in the, was at a storage area in one of our older schools in town here. So every once in a while. And just moving down to K9, busy month for them. It was Roger Paget's. He's in the twilight of, well, actually his career. Today is his last day actually working. But anyways, he had a great month. Police responded to a suspicious person in the Hamptons area. A female was seen exiting the yard with the stolen property. Police located her, found her in possession of the stolen property, and arrested. And our dogs are trained to do property searches. So as we're training the new dog Bronx right now, part of that training is evidence searches. So they conducted an area evidence search in this case, came up with more property, and that happened to be firearms inside of a backpack. And so just a great find for that K9 team. So some really good work there. And they had about 12 calls for service, being there's only 2 canines working right now. And just moving over to page 12, so the DPU started to get back into full swing in April. And I thought I'd draw attention to the third bullet point under Downtown Patrol Unit, just with regard to the CPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design. So the DPU officers are trained to do those types of assessments. So they did one, and what they can do is survey the business or what have you, and make suggestions on how to, sometimes it's a matter of vegetation or doorways or fencing, things they can do to prevent further problems from happening at that location. So just another sort of ancillary duty that they do. From the traffic unit, Constable Smith and Constable Angstad, Lieutenant Edmonton, received their Corporal Cummings Award, each for doing 25 impaired driving investigations throughout the year. So they go up to Edmonton and are treated very well, and there's a whole ceremony there, and they get those awards. And so people from across the province are picked, and you got to get a minimum of 25 impaired charges to get the Corporal Cummings Award, and our traffic unit consistently is at the award ceremony every year, so it's great news. Just moving on to page 13, the Forensic Identification Unit. I just thought I'd draw your attention to the third bullet point there. A break-and-enter file investigated by patrols and FIU. In January, FIU members seized and submitted evidence for DNA analysis, came back with a hit, and that'll be passed back to the investigator who will track down the suspect. So with break-and-enters, just an example of they are taken very seriously, and our forensic folks do a great job. It's not just about fingerprints. If there's DNA to be found, they will find it. In this case, they got a hit, and that's very strong evidence when you get to court. I think prosecutors love that. And that's all I had for the operational services report, unless anybody had any questions.
All right, thanks, Inspector West. I'm going to assume that next up will be Inspector Secondiak with the Investigation and Support Services report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to highlight on two units or two sections in my division. The first one is training on page 14. We've really taken a closer look at some of the training we're providing to our members this year. Does it meet our strategic plan? Is it necessary? And there was a lot of training that went on last month, but it's all vital. So the first one, we had standard field sobriety testing, and this is training to detect people under the influence of drugs when they're driving motor vehicles. We were lucky enough to host this course here locally, but it really speaks to our goal of improving road safety in the community. So outstanding course. We were able to witness some of it at MHPS. And the second one was EDU, or Explosive Disposal Unit training. Really to add on what Inspector West just said, it's important that we have our staff member up to date and trained on EDU. As Inspector West said, we do find ordinance in town from time to time. And looking at the rest of the conference, it really speaks to community safety. We had people trained in interviewing. We had an Axon conference we sent members to that really speaks to innovation and excellence in service delivery. So some really meaningful and great training that occurred last month. And then lastly, in major crimes, CIS on page 16, there's really two files of note. The first one was members of detectives in CIS located a man who had warrants. They were at a completely other file they were investigating. They saw a male just in the area who had warrants. They knew he had warrants. So they just started dealing with him and speaking to him, and the male was reaching for a backpack. And in that backpack, they were quickly to prevent him from doing so, but they found a loaded 20-gauge shotgun and several items of stolen property. So we do speak about this frequently. Weapons are becoming more and more commonplace in the files that we deal with, which is extremely dangerous for our officers. It's a very disturbing trend. But we know AACP, the Alberta Chiefs, and the Canadian Chiefs are also aware of it, and hopefully there'll be some changes to legislation forthcoming. And then lastly, this was in the media, and again to spin off of what Inspector West just said, we had two files, one in November of last year and one in April of this year, where we had pipe bombs, reports of pipe bombs. These are very unusual files for us to have charges on, but we had these two devices, and our EDU unit was called in, and the pipe bombs were disposed of. But we were able to find a suspect through our detectives in CIS and did a search warrant in the 300 block of 11th Street Southwest, and we were able to charge a 40-year-old male with some substantial criminal offenses, including making and possessing explosive substances, and then some drug offenses. So again, very rare criminal charges. I think these are the first ones that I've seen since I've been here, and very dangerous to the public. If these devices go off around people or buildings and facilities, there substantial damage and loss of life could be occur. Those are really the highlights from my area, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Councillor Van Dyke.
Yes, thank you. I just had a question about the online complaints, and I'm not sure who this goes to, the online complaints forms. I was wondering how it's determined, because you can choose what you're complaining about or your issues are, non-emergent issues. How is it determined what is included on that form?
We had a committee perhaps 3 or 4 years ago, including IT, some of our investigators, I was on it, and we went through what we felt were files that could be reported online that didn't require officer attending. And there's all sorts of disclaimers and waivers that come up. If you have a suspect, please call into the non-emergency line. So it was really based on our experience dealing with these files on what could be reported online through the mobile app or on our website.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Sharps?
I just had a quick question about the conference regarding body-worn cameras. I'd like to hear more if that's possible, and is that something we're going to do, all police officers locally? Is that 100%? My understanding, that was the plan, but if you wouldn't mind reminding.
Yeah, I think there is, from the current government, a desire to move towards that. I think with the pending election, that will to be determined what will happen, but I think that is kind of the push from the current government. And I think we see benefit as a police service from that, from a professional standards perspective. It does protect the officers. There are issues with it as well, data storage and redacting data for third-party privacy information. So it's a wonderful tool, but it does come with secondary consequences that we have to be alive to. So
Pretty heavy price tag, my understanding.
that's correct, yeah. It's heavy, and the data storage is probably the heaviest component to that. Like we have to, because of our retention policies, certain files have to be kept longer. So to keep video storage for long periods of time does become quite costly, but we are looking at different, cloud storage options to hopefully reduce the cost. But it is a push for sure provincially.
Just to follow up, and were they enamored with the new technology? Because it looks like it was talking about new technology at the conference.
Yeah, Inspector West was lucky enough to go to that, so perhaps he would, I'm sure he would love to elaborate.
Yeah, I think the technology, one of the things they talked about was live streaming. So for smaller, there was a couple of services that presented where their dispatchers are live monitoring officers when they go to call. So the dispatcher can then, if there is some sort of, issue, like, they're not imagining what's happening, they're actually seeing what's happening. And they really like it where they've been able to do it. Like I say, it's kind of the smaller services. It wasn't just about body worn with Axon. It was a lot of, there was some sessions on drones and the future of drones. There was Axon. What I really found interesting was that Axon is the company that makes body-worn video. So they make body-worn video, tasers, drones, storage. So our another thing they have is an app called Axon Capture. So right now for minor offenses, say it's graffiti and these types of things, if we have a suspect, we'll call out ident to take pictures, and it's a bit of a production. Officers now are just being trained to use Axon Capture. They can take pictures with their phone. It's automatically, it doesn't stay on their phone. It goes right to evidence.com and gets married up with the file. So we're just rolling out that training now, which we think will take some of the heat off ident and save officers from taking pictures, emailing them, putting them on discs, like all kinds of things. So there was a lot of technology, it was a lot to take in. Another direction they're heading in is Axon is looking, I would guess, in the future, they're probably going to be either a bolt-on for current RMS systems or create their own, where body-worn will be married up with report management systems. And so it was a lot to take in. So it wasn't just about the body-worn, it was how body-worn's being used and being coordinated with their other technologies. And I know the future is probably headed towards them creating a report management system at some point. So it was cool, yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate, I figured it would be some cool technology coming out, so thank you.
And if this, once the new government's elected, if this goes forward, Alberta will be the first province to have mandatory body-worn cameras. So the issue isn't the cameras are relatively cheap. It's the ongoing of the human resources, the people you need to redact video and to go through it all and to get it to the Crown, because that's a big deal. And then the storage, like Brent mentioned. So those are the bigger ongoing costs that if something's going to be mandated for us, I hope there'll be some help on that. But there's a lot more to come on that one, for sure.
Quick question. The file that you referenced from CIS, the individual that had the warrants and the sawed-off shotgun and multiple charges, was that a local resident or was that somebody that came into town tied into other activity or?
I know he's local and somebody we're very familiar with, habitual offender.
Thank you. Anything else for Inspector Secondiak? All right. Chief Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's a number of activities that are listed in the chief's report that we've taken part in our office over the past month, so I won't go through those unless you have any questions. A couple of things I do want to raise, though. It was announced today that, or recently, the Canadian police chiefs, they lobbied the premiers to speak to the federal justice minister in terms of bail reform. And so that's been a significant concern for a while now in the country. So the federal government announced today Bill C-48, which is a bill to make amendments to bail reform. So that's at least one step forward. Certainly not the end of the road, but it's just the right step forward to get where we need to be on that. So that was encouraging today. Joe mentioned the new police service dog, Bronx. So Bronx and his handler, Constable Gareth McPherson, they're still doing their training. They're doing it's amazing how well they're doing, how well that particular canine is doing. He's adapted very well. So they have about 6 weeks to go, but we saw some videos of their training earlier today, and that dog's doing real well so far. So it's very encouraging that it's going the right way. So we'll know more as we go, but that's still doing well. And Joe mentioned downtown patrol unit. So as you know, due to staffing pressures, Sergeant Brian Bourne was working alone during the winter months with that was augmented by some patrol members that helped him. But Constable Travis Funk joined Brian Bourne recently, and we'll have a third member joining in the near future. So we'll be back to 3 there. And I can tell you that, I'm sure you've seen it downtown. I have during the weekends when I'm down there on my own time, and I've seen patrols members from other squads that aren't assigned downtown when they're in this area, park their cars and walk around. And it's been noticed, like I've seen it myself, and I'm sure others have too. So it's pretty cool that others are doing that. And the credit goes to Joe and Brent for encouraging folks to be doing that work when it's not part of their assigned area. So it's really good.
If I could just jump in, I will say that when Brian was down to just him, we really felt it downtown. Like we felt it all the way across. I was getting phone calls and texts as council saying, what the heck's going on? We need these guys. And now that Travis is down there, we're seeing that. I'm getting phone calls saying, oh, this is awesome, they're back. So, you know, it's not going unnoticed by the downtown core. We appreciate it. And it was funny, one of the business owners called me and said she hasn't left her office to walk for coffee in 3 months. And she felt like she could do that yesterday. So it is, you know, please know how much of an impact that makes.
Yeah, we're certainly aware of that. And unfortunately, because it's not that we didn't think it was important, just staffing pressures made us we had to put people in different places during the winter just to keep things moving. But we certainly recognize, especially this time of year, how big of a difference it makes. And it's not just about having anybody either. It's about having the right people. And Brian Bourne is 100% they're one of the right people. Travis Funk is another one, and then we should have someone very good coming on board as well. It's not just having anybody to fill the spot, it's the right people. Because that work downtown is difficult work. It's not for everybody, and it's slow because getting people out of that cycle of addiction and mental health to get them help takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of patience, and these people are at their worst stage, and you need to have a lot of patience to get them the help they need. So we got the right people down there right now, and we're getting there. Yep.
Anything else for Chief Murphy on the chief's report? Okay. Not aware of any action items we're going to address tonight. So it takes us to the public consultation portion of the meeting. We have one individual in the gallery. Did you wish to pose a question or provide any comments to the commission?
You're doing a great job. Keep it up. Thank you.
Ian, can I have that in writing, please? Thank you.
All right. I'll take that as a no. You just saved me reading another piece here. So that's all good. Anything else before we move to adjournment? Okay. The next meeting will go on schedule, third Wednesday of June. That would be June 21st in this venue. And with that, we will call the meeting adjourned at 6:31. Thank you.